Hi everyone. Today we are heading off to film a brand new episode of the Across Oceans podcast. For this special occasion, I have a wonderful guest. Or rather, I am currently visiting a brilliant composer, a creative innovator, a virtuoso guitarist, and just an incredibly interesting person, Serge Khrichenko. Here we are driving through downtown Washington. It's a very green city, practically green even now. There are so many parks, and this is already a typical Washington suburb. We are entering Silver Spring, where our composer resides.
Снимаю уже сразу, снимаю. Привет. Ничего страшного,
So
привет.
this is the Bertolt Brecht dormitory.
Now I see.
Привет. Здравствуйте. Красавицы наши,
Привет, маэстро.
The studio is right here. It's so beautiful.
Various musical instruments. There used to be many of them. An artist made these photos, a fan of Serge's. Some of my favorite photos, like these ones, are currently hanging on the walls of the Swedish embassy. I remember I was there strumming my guitar and playing music for the guests, so there was actually a live performance taking place in that beautiful space. Yes, I think there's another one like this there in the Swedish embassy.
Yes, it looks absolutely gorgeous.
And right here, I sometimes enjoy playing music just for myself.
That's one sauce for the fish.
Okay.
Guys, great. С Новым годом. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Ура, 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 ура.
Sergey Khrichenko is a Russian-American composer, guitarist, and educator. A laureate of the EUTERPI International Chamber Music Competition in Italy, where the jury chair, former La Scala conductor Marcello Abbado, called his music the classics of the future. Serge Khrichenko's music is a bold synthesis of neoclassicism, jazz fusion, art rock, and academic expression. Khrichenko's works have been performed at the Kennedy Center and at international festivals, becoming finalists in prestigious competitions, including the UK Songwriting Contest. His composition Dangerous Journey has repeatedly entered the top 10 on Earth in the jazz fusion category. Critics describe Sergey's style as intellectual, bold, and truly unique.
Sergey, I have known you for about, probably 8 years now.
Yes, most likely, yeah. I'd say it's something like that.
However, the truth is that I do not know your personal life story. When exactly did you come here from Russia? Was it 30 years ago?
Almost, yeah. It was about 29 years ago.
I almost guessed it, yes. Was your decision to leave Russia a conscious one? Or that is, was it truly your own choice or just a coincidence?
No. It was, of course, a conscious choice. As cliché and funny as it might seem to me, I dreamed of moving to this country, probably as a small child, 4 or 5 years old, I think, when I first started strumming something on the accordion. When my dad bought me a little accordion, I remember a Weltmeister, very small, tiny. I strummed on it, and for some reason I always dreamed of going to America. America was just everywhere in our house. I knew all 50 states back then, even as a very small child. When I started first grade, we had a bit of a scandal. My dad and my mom were called to the school. Why does your child know? And there was a geography task, how many, in which states, which countries, and so on. And the kids, some named 2 or 3 states, but I named all 50 in a row, and they called my parents to the school.
A spy.
A spy, something like that. He knows all 50 states. They gave a lecture. Look at your child.
So you really chose this country?
I wanted to.
An opportunity arose?
Yes, it was, of course, a rather complex opportunity. The very first time I actually came here was back in 1996. And why exactly did I come? Well, back in 1993, in the city of St. Petersburg, there was a major event called the Open Music Festival. And all these probably avant-garde jazz stars were there, probably from all over the world, all famous ones, including part of, not the whole King Crimson band, King Crimson, then others. I don't know. I don't even remember the names anymore. And we were, to be honest, sitting around drinking a bit of beer. It was somewhere between the shows or something like that, hanging out with those guys from King Crimson and just chatting about nothing. My English was still rough then, but in any case, someone was translating and so on. It wasn't hard. And one of them, who I think had had a bit too much beer, was Tony Levin, if I'm not mistaken, only, of course, I think so, yes. He said, "Don't you want to just go there?" Yeah, just like that. I said to him, "Well, there is simply no way. How can a person just go? Just pick up and leave?" Then I told him, "I will sit down and write you a recommendation letter right now." And he wrote me a recommendation, and a very good one at that, because we had a very good festival. My band was wonderful. I want to mention the band again. It was called Mantra. Mantra. They actually played my own music there.
Is that band still active in this day and age?
No, unfortunately, that is the case, alas. Well, to be perfectly honest, after I eventually left the group, it all just kind of fell apart. Well, if I may be allowed to say so, I even remember those musicians by name. There were several of them. There was an absolutely wonderful drummer named Andrei Bogdanov. The lead guitarist was Vadim Kasic, and the violinist was Svetlana Stranchenko, I believe, if I recall correctly. Sergey Popov on violin, another second violin, and saxophone. Saxophone, flutes, clarinet. Igor Samsonov. He's already unfortunately gone. It was a wonderful band. Why do I say such a wonderful band? Russian musicians are actually great musicians, really. I'm talking about both classical and even jazz ones, too, despite the well-known fact that the true home of jazz is right here. But after arriving here and staying for a while, I eventually realized, while meeting and playing with local musicians at various jam sessions and different musical mix-ups, I realized that not everyone is quite as exceptionally good as I had initially thought they were. And as I imagined that in America the musicians, especially the black ones, well, they're just fantastic rhythmically and so on. But when we actually encountered them, when I started a band there, it was Acoustic Machine, and we had a couple of really good black musicians. But for the most part, well, they weren't rhythmic. They couldn't sing. I don't know. I can't say anything bad about those guys, though they're wonderful. They're just mediocre. In Russia, the musicians were better. And now probably a new generation is growing up. That's how it is, unfortunately. But the classical musicians here, of course, there are some very serious ones. There are. Not all of them, but there are some wonderful ones.
So you managed to move here on a talent visa, right?
Well, yes, I think that is probably so, because I submitted all the documents, I started working on it, and I actually managed to get a visa in 1996. They let me through, surprisingly.
It was even easier back then, wasn't it?
It probably was much easier back then. In 1996, I was still quite young, relatively speaking. Yes, I moved and I made copies of all my important documents, had them officially certified with American seals by what they call attorneys who do those stamps and so on. Because then I gathered the documents. We applied for everything, and for Olga, naturally, we applied too. And after some time, I went back literally in 2 or 3 weeks. I did everything, or a month. It took about a month. I talked to some of my close friends, relatives, and so on. Then I came back, and an envelope arrived. We see this interesting envelope in the mail back home in Russia. We see the message, "You have won a green card."
Well, nowadays it takes years.
Now it actually takes many decades, and everything in our world is moving at an incredibly fast pace. And literally, yeah, they are telling us that you absolutely have to leave by around September 3rd, 1997. You already have to leave at that time, basically, as that is the official deadline they have set for everyone.
Deadlines apply.
Yeah. There's a deadline. So we had to go to the embassy. They gave some more additional documents there, sealed them in an envelope, I remember, a yellow one, all for Olga and for me. And it couldn't be opened for some reason, couldn't be opened anywhere. You didn't have the right only to say that at customs in New York, or wherever you arrive, they will open it right there. You cannot do it yourself.
So now that you have arrived, what turned out to be the most difficult challenge, both in your everyday personal life and professionally?
Well, in everyday life first, of course, we had to find and rent an apartment. Well, relatives helped us out, as we had some relatives living here. First, we lived with those relatives for about a month, but then we finally rented an apartment with great difficulty, mostly because we needed what is called a cosigner.
Are you looking to rent it?
Yes, to rent a place like that, it's quite a complicated process. Well, in any case, we managed to rent one.
And in professional terms?
In professional terms, I have successfully secured a new job. We first made our way to Philadelphia. Olga went to learn English and retrain since she is our computer specialist. That is exactly how she worked back home in Russia. Something closely related to programming, that kind of work.
Well, I'll just say that Olga is actually Sergey's wife.
Olga is my beloved girl. Yes, she went away to study, specifically to learn English and just to retrain herself for the local terminology and so on. So it took her quite probably about 6 months. During that time, I worked in a restaurant and I also played in Philadelphia. Then I went over to New York to the Tatiana restaurant, I think, and the Coral Mansion. I visited some other little local restaurants too, sometimes staying for a couple of days. It was hard, of course, with all the traveling, some measly money. A Russian restaurant, well, no matter. But there was definitely something there, yeah.
So you had to make sacrifices. Tell me a little bit about what it was like before the move. So you graduated from the conservatory, didn't you then?
Well, the thing is, I didn't actually graduate from it, unfortunately.
But you studied in St. Petersburg, Russia?
I was young. I studied, but I wanted to tour. They offered concerts at the Philharmonic. I started traveling everywhere with different bands all across the Soviet Union. I traveled everywhere, saw everything. Then I dropped my studies. Unfortunately, it's a great pity. Study comrades, it will come in very handy.
And where did you start studying and where didn't you finish?
Yes, so I finished that again in St. Petersburg. There I had both the Rimsky-Korsakov Music School, which is part of the conservatory, and then I went to jazz college where I studied playing the clarinet. And then I think I was at the conservatory for just a tiny bit, for a little while. And I unfortunately ended up leaving the program early. I should have finished it all and then started doing while I was young. You just want to see the world and to play. You see what the other musicians are doing out there.
I've already told our viewers that you're a truly exceptional virtuoso on the guitar. And yeah, I'll say that you have a unique and very specific technical approach for playing electric guitar. It's your own technique, right? Something you actually invented yourself?
It's not even just on electric. I can basically play on acoustic too. Of course, yeah.
Was this specific technique already acquired, developed in Russia or right here locally?
Back in Russia, I only started developing it, yeah. I was trying to figure out how to apply a sort of piano style to the guitar.
Uh-huh. Oh, so it came from the piano?
And then this tapping technique appeared here, much like Eddie Van Halen's style. Tapping, so it became tapping, and so on. But I tried to lay it on my legs, across my knees, and started working it all out. How can I play, say, a chord with my left hand and a melody here, and then switch it, vice versa, play some little chord here? Well, you can take 3 or 4 chords with 3 or 4 notes, because you can't take more. Like on a piano, for instance, there won't be that stretch. But 3 or 4 notes is basically enough for a chord, and then you can simply play the melody right here. So, honestly, it's very fun to do, and I really got hooked on it, as they often say.
But was this technique chosen exclusively for the visual show, or was there something more to it?
Not just for the visual appeal, of course, largely for the show. After all, most people find it quite interesting.
Well, yeah, that is quite curious. I'd like to go back a little bit to your move once again. Was there a genuine fear of starting everything from scratch? You already had a very successful career established there, and you even had your own band. But here, everything is starting from the very beginning.
Well, of course.
A lot of people come here and start a completely different profession altogether, right?
Well, there was, of course, a serious thought like that. To perhaps take up a completely different profession, like Olga's, for example. Something like software programming. I actually tried it for about a week.
Programming?
Yeah, and that was pretty much the end of it. I eventually got a job at some company. Well, I was only there for about a month or so, and then that was it. And I wasn't actually fired from the position. I just decided to leave on my own.
Looking back now, did anything specifically from your early education over in Russia become a solid foundation that you still find yourself standing on here today? Or after all these years, has absolutely everything changed?
I think that the traditional Russian and Soviet education system is much more advanced, especially in music.
What professional skills acquired while living in Russia have been the most useful for you here?
Composing original ones, to be honest, right? Yeah, I think I definitely developed something a bit more substantial here, but I also composed a lot over there and we played together. It was really quite interesting, actually. It is even hard to explain it all in any other way. I just really want to show you. You see, composers write music and they often use computers to do it. I use it quite often too, but mainly for the specific purpose of printing out the sheet music so that it is much more convenient for the musician to use. You see, I have a lot of different stuff here, a whole shelf that is completely full of it. There is really a ton of things kept in this area. I make all kinds of musical sketches first, and then I eventually turn them into full professional scores. Like this, for instance. Well, it really seems to me that and this is just my own personal opinion, I might be wrong, when you take the time to do everything with your own two hands, using your fingers to handle every detail, and I have this feeling, maybe I'm just right for myself, I'm not trying to convince anyone, that some kind of liveliness still remains. You create a living sound, then you put it on paper naturally, you print it, and you get printed notes. That's so the musicians can read it, the singer can sing it, and so that it's convenient, because my messy scribbles are actually impossible for anyone to decipher. And then it seems to me that it already starts to sound beautiful. Even in the printed notes, it still sounds very much alive somehow. It is just like it was in the cantata when Yulia Petrachuk sang so amazingly, just brilliantly. I still get goosebumps thinking about when we were doing all that.
Has your understanding of what it means to be a composer changed over these last few years living here?
Yes, of course, it has changed. Very much so. It is very different. It's a very complex and incredibly difficult path here. It certainly wasn't easy back there either, naturally. There were, well, all sorts of artistic committees to deal with, professional envy, and even a strange lack of envy at times. So you, as a truly wonderful and brilliant vocalist, you know all of this perfectly well. It was exactly the same for me. But on the other hand, somehow it all managed to break through in the end, no matter what, despite any difficulties. It was easier for me there. They even paid 50 kopecks per bar back then. That was a lot of money. 50 kopecks per bar. If you're doing an orchestration or writing something, 50 kopecks, it added up. They said, go ahead, double it. My musician friends told me, double it for more bars, then they'll pay more. No, I won't do freebies. That's just how it was. Such resourceful guys.
Well, that is certainly very resourceful of you.
What was that? Oh, I am very sorry. That might be an issue with my speaker. Probably. We were unfortunately interrupted just then. Yes, that's right. So if we take a moment to go back to how everything actually happens here, you will see that it is all very difficult to manage. There are moments when you feel like you want to give it all up because the creative process is so demanding. Sometimes you write something and it seems like, well, it is not bad music. It is actually quite nice. And you think that maybe it is worth showing to the public and sharing with the world. But on the other hand, you realize that without people like Yulia Petrachuk, you simply cannot do anything, which is something I have to admit to my great regret. No matter how talented you are, no matter how brilliant you might be in this regard, but it's just so difficult, almost impossible. And I am still quite a bit shy and hesitant sometimes. I really can't just go up to someone and ask for something in that regard. Like, let me play, roughly speaking, or like maybe take a look at my music and so on.
So basically today a composer has to be more than simply a traditional composer, but also their own producer.
Of course, yes. Of course.
Strong communication skills.
Yes.
And so on. Well, maybe the events that took place back in the 90s, it is not necessarily certain that it would be the same way now. So perhaps you are comparing it to the way that things used to be back then in the former Soviet Union.
No, I don't really want that kind of return at all. Not in a musical sense, no. Although it was quite good and fascinating, I find it even more interesting now to live in a musical sense after all, despite some of these difficulties. Sometimes there are festivals, they invite me. They invite me. I don't even know how. Maybe they see something on YouTube where I'm strumming, or perhaps in some other way I travel sometimes. But even that is also becoming a bit insufficient for me now, especially when I am playing somewhere all alone, using some backing tracks that I have also come up with myself and so on and so forth. But it is just not the same as having a real live musician right there with you, like a singer or maybe a pianist.
Tell me, did you ever feel like starting up a band here when you first arrived?
I definitely did have that strong desire back then, and it actually happened. There was a really good group too called Acoustic Machine. There was a violinist, another great guitarist who played the acoustic, a drummer, and that was about it, I think. And we had a wonderful, a black drummer named Ezel, I remember. He sang falsetto beautifully. And largely because of that fact, I didn't have to write for him. He just got it right away. The violinist, for example, would have a written part and he'd play in unison, creating an amazing, beautiful timbre. It was actually really popular. But then, unfortunately, our violinist kind of went off the rails a bit. And so basically the group fell apart, unfortunately. Yeah, it was a very good band. Interesting.
Could you please explain what you believe Russia should learn from the United States?
Oh, it's probably a sense of genuine friendliness. Although, despite everything,
No, I mean specifically within the context of our own profession.
musicians, yes, I think the most important part is mutual understanding.
So that was what was missing.
It was absolutely missing because everyone tried to pull in their own direction, even though, for example, the band was playing my music. But everyone had there were disagreements. That's why bands all fall apart, groups and such. Maybe only symphonic or chamber orchestras don't fall apart. Most likely they don't for those reasons.
Do you feel like more of an insider or perhaps an outsider in any particular place right now?
That is actually a very good question, to be perfectly honest. Sometimes both an insider and an outsider. There.
Here? Yes, right over here.
It really depends. Maybe on the region, most likely, or just sometimes. Sometimes, when you go out there to some of the more southern states, you are not an insider. They pick up on the accent right away, even though mine isn't bad at all. In fact, it's actually quite good. But they notice you're from elsewhere. They don't say you're from Russia or wherever. They probably think you live in Washington or Maryland, something along those lines, or somewhere further up north. We're rednecks here. We have a very different path of our own and so on. But when I start playing country or bluegrass, that's it. Everything settles down. You're one of them. They bring you beer and so on and so forth, and that's it.
Well, what about Russia? When was the last time you were actually there?
Well, Olga and I were actually there visiting as tourists for maybe 3 full days back in 2019, right? Yes, it was probably 2019. But back in Russia, let me think for a moment. It was probably around 2012. There was a truly wonderful festival called Guitar World. Such a fantastic and great festival. Oleg Akimov is the one who organizes it. Can you even imagine Aldi Meola performed there and the incredible Paco de Lucia too? Those are the most brilliant, greatest guitar stars that ever existed. Even King Crimson we met there, and it was truly an amazing meeting once again. And many, many, many other incredible people were there too. Well, it is probably still being held today, but likely on a much more local scale.
So in Russia, did you feel like an insider or already like an outsider?
Well, probably like an outsider. Like an outsider, after all, they looked so suspiciously at everything. Well, not exactly a spy, of course, but suspiciously enough, they kind of kept their distance from me, yeah. Even those, so to speak, old musicians I played with there, well, I mean old in the sense that we worked together for a very long time. They even kind of kept their distance. I was an outsider, just a complete outsider to them, unfortunately. Even though in reality I am actually a very friendly person.
You are often described in reviews as an artist who blends different genres. How would you describe yourself? Or do you feel you have a unique style that is your own?
In some respects, that is partially correct, but I definitely feel as though I am carving out my own path. Not just mixing some genres like classical or non-classical, you could just call it neoclassical, because really absolutely nothing more impressive or genuinely more fascinating than, say, Bach or Vivaldi has been created in this entire field. In this constantly shifting and now evolving musical genre, it often feels as though absolutely nothing else has been invented yet. At first, well, I really tried not necessarily to imitate it exactly, but I tried to at least somewhat match that specific classical, neoclassical style, especially when you find yourself writing complex arrangements for a full symphonic orchestra.
Do you think it's important for a composer to go beyond the limits of academic language?
That is also a highly interesting question. It is probably absolutely necessary, but if you happen to overdo it, it inevitably transforms into something that is pure avant-garde. There's not a single idea here, it's all so cold. There is no music, no vibrant or beautiful melody, not even the slightest little bit. Sometimes you listen. Olga and I often go to the Kennedy Center to hear the symphony orchestra. Sometimes even with the great works of Beethoven and others like him, I just can't seem to catch it. My physical hearing is still very good, but what I really mean is catching that certain kind of elusive beauty. I hear arpeggios down, up C major, D minor, and blah, 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 and so on and so on and so on. But the exquisitely beautiful and moving melody, which Beethoven himself has woven into this piece, is truly brilliant. It all feels like a glimpse into something greater. Still, a sense of pure beauty must always be present throughout the work. I understand that you can go beyond academicism, of course, and you probably should, but aesthetic beauty must endure. Some kind of life must be sustained.
So tell me, for you, are there still some forbidden techniques that exist?
Is it strictly forbidden? Especially if you are writing something for professional vocalists. That is a technique that is strictly forbidden. Hitting those high notes can be incredibly difficult.
Well, you still continue to compose your music in a neoclassical style and also incorporate elements that are arguably much closer to jazz. And do you truly believe that this represents the authentic language of today's generation?
No, I really don't. I absolutely don't think so. I think it's the language of the future generation after all, arriving a bit later than we expect, much later. Well, a wise man once told me, we were participating at the Euterpe competition, which is a prestigious music contest held in Italy. I actually managed to win a significant prize there, which is very important for my career. And the jury chairman for that event was the renowned Marcello Abbado, whom Olga knows quite well. He, unfortunately, passed away not so long ago, which was a great loss. And when he was presenting the awards, we sat and talked afterwards, and he said, "Your music is the true classic of the future. Just you wait and see." But I can't wait, there's no time. Yes, I'm joking, of course. But he said it's the classic of the future.
In your professional opinion, what would you say a composer's courage actually consists of in today's world?
Oh, courage, I think, is returning once again to the classics, to what you were taught in the conservatory or academy. That's the true courage, because everyone is constantly trying to move forward, not knowing where forward is or what's ahead of you, what kind of a musical future it is. Mostly, no one has a clear clue what to aim for. And so the avant-garde begins. I understand that many try to work in the style of Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring. There's a mass of rhythmic bodies, a lot of avant-garde and so on, complex harmonies changing. Well, sometimes you listen to what's happening. I often listen specifically to understand where I'm going myself. I listen and I don't like it, not because it's not talented. It is talented, very much so. But I don't like it because there's too much unnecessary avant-garde. And it's cold. It's all just cold, cold, cold. There is absolutely no warmth, no peace. It's almost as if the composer is gazing intently into a somber grave, if you'll excuse the expression, right there in the music.
Well then, do you think it's simply for the purpose of being different from everybody else around you?
I think it's simply to be different, primarily to be different. Like, I'm like this, and you are all like that.
So, going back to the classics is an act of real courage.
It's courage now. Yes, that's how it seems to me, although maybe I'm mistaken. I'm not going to insist on it, but that's truly how it feels to me.
What kind of person are you when you're not busy making music?
Sometimes very noisy, and sometimes quite quiet.
Would you be able to say that in your works? It is actually you?
Of course, yes. One way or another, you're expressing yourself, those personal inner qualities that you have. Well, I try to be a kind and decent person. I try to live peacefully, to respect people around me, to love our wonderful, complex world. And I want peace, peace everywhere, for everyone. Regardless of religion or creed or the color of your skin, none of that matters. It is really irrelevant. We need peace.
When did you first come to the realization that you were meant to be a composer? Or that this was truly your calling and your destiny?
I think it was probably when I was about 13 years old.
Yes, that is correct.
I think so, yeah. And then I just started teaching myself the guitar. Well, I was taught the clarinet and some other things, but I taught myself the guitar.
Do you personally consider competitions to be an important part of a composer's long-term career?
Of course, absolutely. If it is possible, especially if a person manages to get into one. I mean international ones, like the Euterpe competition, for example. There were people there from Germany, China, Japan, and Korea, many from Ukraine, and I think even some from Russia. There were just so many people.
So, would you personally recommend, for instance, that aspiring composers take part in various music competitions?
Even for those who aren't beginners, it's still a very good idea to participate because you see what's being done and you hear it. It's all very interesting, like in Bari, Italy, which is south of Milan. When we arrived there with our trio, I don't know if it was nerves or what it was. There were only a few days left before our performance, before the competition, and my hand started hurting. It went numb. I couldn't lift anything. My fingers on my left hand just wouldn't work. And I had to play, and play a lot. It was a big program. They gave us 35 minutes for each participant. The jury had the sheet music. They all sat there with it. You had to bring the scores. And then the scores, there they were. They sat there following everything, and I was playing off key. I mean, not sticking to it. The other guys stuck to it, of course, exactly as written. But for me, it was purely... So, yeah.
And would you say that you have any specific boundaries or limits to your improvisation? No?
No, just wait. I absolutely love it. I especially love hearing it in bluegrass, for example, which is a classic style of American country music. It has a bit of that classic Spanish style. I really love listening to all kinds of Oriental music, particularly Asian styles, such as the traditional sounds found in Turkish or Lebanese music.
Tell me, is it really possible to earn a sustainable living from composing music today, honestly?
Well, if you haven't quite made it big in Hollywood yet, like the famous John Williams or someone similar, of course you haven't. That is why most professional composers find they must do something else as well. Some do orchestrations if they can, some do festivals, some perform, some teach in schools, and so on. Of course, it's very difficult.
How do you see yourself and your personal music career in, say, 10 years?
So where will we be in 10 years? Well, looking ahead, of course, that's a question about the future. To be honest, it's quite hard to predict with any certainty, and I have no desire to even think about or guess what might happen in 10 years' time. I hope something will be going on. I hope we'll be doing something else together. Maybe we'll manage to do something in America and in Russia and in Europe. There will be other projects with a large orchestra, a smaller orchestra. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter to me at all. I would be very happy if this period of our lives continued in this same direction so that we are always working. And I will be happy because, after all, you are truly happy when you are doing something that you truly enjoy.
Well, let's say again, from a commercial and financial standpoint, do you ever really take a moment to think, well, not even just about the commerce, but about the practicality and the ease of the performance itself? Because writing a piece, let's say, for a pipe organ and a full orchestra, that means extra expenses for whoever is organizing the concert. In such cases, do you often find that you have to compromise on certain instruments? Or perhaps on some of your creative ideas?
Of course, I absolutely have to, because I have several, well, what should I call them? Complex pieces or major compositions that are specifically written for a full-scale symphony orchestra plus a grand pipe organ and a full choir. Take my work, Lost on Mars, for example, yeah. It could, of course, be performed with a scaled-down orchestra if necessary, but it simply wouldn't have that same immense power that the original arrangement provides. There is that incredible build-up, the powerful release, and so on. Then building up all over again with the sheer power of those very unusual melodies that just stay with you. It is a real pity, of course, that things are this way right now. But someday, well, you mentioned a 10-year time frame, a full 10 years, so maybe we will actually manage to do something significant during all that time, because truly, thanks to you and your support, Yulechka, I feel a deep sense of inspiration. I want to work all the time. Musical thoughts and ideas are constantly coming to me. Sometimes they're crazy, sometimes normal, but they are good musical ideas.
Well, actually, I also often collaborate with various talented musicians, composers, and creative artists, and I truly see how we all constantly inspire each other.
Of course.
Every now and then, someone has an idea, or someone has an opportunity to do something in a specific place. Then you get another idea, and we all kind of collectively pull each other forward.
Of course.
And then, as you can see, it all just keeps spinning forward in a beautiful way, and that truly is a wonderful thing to witness. In just a few short days from now, your new cantata will finally have its grand world premiere. This is a brand new work, and it will be a world premiere known as the Cantata of Peace. It is always very interesting to learn the fascinating story and the inspiration behind its creation. How did it all originally start? Where exactly did the initial inspiration come from? And what is this creative piece actually about anyway?
Oh, well, the original spark of inspiration, to be perfectly honest, came from she made such a unique proposal, a musical one, that was impossible to refuse. I thought that, well, it would be just one piece, maybe 2, 3, or 4 minutes long, but it turned out to be a rather large composition in several parts. But I decided to try it, thinking, well, I'll do it now. And I think I finished it quite quickly.
So this is probably the largest form among your works?
Yes, quite probably, yes. I am very happy indeed, and I am truly looking forward to any result. I just hope that the musicians, no, I do not just hope, I am absolutely sure that they will play very well. They're professionals after all. Russian musicians are good musicians, absolutely good.
Tell me, is there any internal anxiety?
Yes,
Yes?
yes, that is very, very much the case. If only I could manage to make it through this week.
Yes.
Well, we will certainly get through it all, of course. But I truly want to express once more to the audience and to you that I am so deeply grateful to you, to your company, Lyrica Classic, and to you, Julia, personally, for providing me with such a wonderful opportunity to, well, present and showcase this music. It is not at all simple. Perhaps it will even seem quite difficult or complex to some people. I don't think it's extremely complex, but for the musicians, it will be a great challenge, of course. But for the audience's perception, for the ear, it's remarkably easy to take in.
Well, overall, it is a truly fascinating combination. Like you mentioned, it features a blend of voice, a full orchestra, the organ, and percussion instruments.
Yes, there aren't timpani and percussion everywhere, but in certain parts.
There's this element of neoclassicism.
Of course, an element of neoclassicism, plus some polyphonic interplay between the voice and the violins, including cellos, violas, double basses, as well as other instruments.
And tell me a little bit about the content of the cantata. It's written for a vocalist without any words, but still, naturally, there is a deep sense of meaning. Could you say a few words about whether a sense of spirituality is present there?
I truly believe that it is present within the work. Well, otherwise, I suppose it might not have turned out quite so beautifully as it did in the end. Of course, I was sincerely trying to perhaps convey a significant part of my own complex inner world and personal perspective through this creation.
Tell me, are you a person of faith?
I wouldn't necessarily say that I am a particularly religious person, per se. Well, it's hard for me to judge if this music, this cantata, is spiritual, but I really wanted to convey a sense of kindness through this music. I would like people to understand that I personally strive for a world of peace, and I truly want them all to live their lives well, peacefully and kindly, without any quarreling or fighting. Well, it is actually very, very difficult to describe the meaning of your own music, you know, Julia. And it seems to me that this music is sincere. There's a certain purity in it. At least that's how it feels to me. I wanted to bring this sense of absolute purity to the people and to the entire audience. And
I see that you have a guitar, but do you have a banjo?
yes, I also have an acoustic guitar there. Well, that's just a small part of it. I got rid of the rest.
So how many musical instruments do you play?
Well, the banjo. On this one, it's a 6-string, but I usually play 4 or 5 strings. They have completely different tunings, and everything's different, very different from, well, playing the guitar. I don't play the clarinet much now because you have to blow every single day, especially since you really need a strong embouchure. Yes, definitely. The embouchure is the lips for a clarinetist, a musician, the reed and all that. And I don't really do that anymore. I don't practice at all, yeah. But I played quite well once, yeah. I studied with a man named Semyon Umovich Mandrusov. He was a musician in Leningrad, I think, in the first Leningrad Symphony Orchestra. Such a talented man. I studied with him. Wonderful.
Tell me, is there any specific music that you absolutely love, but would never admit to liking publicly?
There are some things by the rapper Eminem, you know, Eminem like that, yeah, Eminem. Well, I think some of his songs and his things are very interesting. They're incredibly musical, first of all, and very interesting to listen to, yeah, that's exactly why. But I just honestly don't recognize any of these other rappers at all.
I have often wondered, if you had never become a professional composer, what kind of different career path in life do you honestly think you might have chosen to follow instead?
I'd definitely be a composer, and even if I weren't one, I'd still be coming up with new ideas anyway.
I am really quite curious how a composer's brain actually works.
You can't describe it in words.
You simply can't describe it at all.
It sometimes gets really quite scary, just scary because, well, I don't know about other composers, it's hard to say. For example, when I work I don't just sit there with a guitar or at some piano or a keyboard or anything like that at all. Just some, without any false nonsense or modesty, some vivid mental images. Sometimes these images just arise. Of course, when no one is bothering me, the Russian television programs aren't on, that Russian channel and so on, I just sit there peacefully, quietly and calmly. Just images, vivid images, without any alcohol, naturally, without any kind of additives, God forbid. Yes, in a clear and completely sober state of mind and so on.
And I was wondering, do you actually need a large audience or just a single listener, I mean? Or in general, does a 21st century composer not need a listener?
Absolutely necessary, of course. How could it be otherwise?
Well, perhaps you could just try to express your feelings for yourself, say, on a blank piece of paper.
On a piece of paper, then into the cabinet.
And into the cabinet.
No, absolutely, absolutely, of course. I mean, you can't really make any real progress at all without an audience. Otherwise, there will be no progress, it seems to me, none whatsoever.
What valuable pieces of advice would you give to a young person who is an aspiring musical composer today?
Well, as for advice, nobody really likes taking advice.
If you look back now, what advice would you give, for example, to your younger self if you went back, I don't know, 30 years ago?
It is probably to meet some talented musicians, to find musicians who will fully support you, and then you'll start making your own music. Well, to start a band or an orchestra, I don't know, that's the feeling.
So basically, to bring people together around you.
Of course, yes,
Well, yeah, I think that's right too.
absolutely, I agree.
Well, then, we have now arrived at the conclusion of our interview.
A serious interview, yes.
Yes, that is exactly right. I have a rapid-fire blitz quiz prepared for you right here. I am looking for very short answers, perhaps just one single word or a brief phrase, given quickly without any overthinking or hesitation on your part. Between Russia or the USA, where is it easier for you to work?
In the United States.
The academy or your freedom?
True freedom.
Is it a musical note or a brief pause?
Take a pause.
Is it a written score or just improvisation?
Both a score and improvisation.
Is it a competition or just a live stage?
Live your life.
Is it achieving success, gaining public recognition, or finding true inner peace that matters most to you?
Finding true peace. A sense of deep inner tranquility.
Is pursuing your education in Russia a major advantage or a limitation?
That is an A+.
Immigration, a calculated risk, a necessity, or a fundamental freedom?
It is a significant risk.
The concept of complexity in music, is it a goal or just a means?
It is a method, in all probability.
Is the listener a supportive partner or a witness?
A direct eyewitness to the event. Someone who saw everything happen.
Is the past a solid foundation or just heavy baggage?
It is likely baggage. Probably just more baggage.
Is music a career path or an all-consuming addiction?
It is a powerful and overwhelming addiction. That takes control.
Thank you, Sergey.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very, very much.
I was very happy to chat, to learn so much about you. Maybe if there's anything else you want to say, you can say it now. Perhaps there are some specific questions I didn't ask that you would like to answer.
I want to send greetings to the 1703 Orchestra and to the singer Marina, but I just don't remember her last name.
Dektelyova.
Yes, we send our biggest greetings to her and wish her great luck in this most difficult endeavor. Oh, and of course we send our warmest greetings to Russia. Hello, we truly love this country. After all, we were born right there. Well, it was the Soviet Union actually, but no matter. Now it's Russia, it doesn't matter. Yes, we love it. We send our warmest greetings and we wish you peace, goodness, happiness, and prosperity. There.
Well, let it be so.
Let it be just exactly so.
That is truly excellent.
Не мог остановить, поэтому точно.